Hi, I'm Dr. George Yancey. Let's share some paradigms. And the paradigm I share today is progressive Christian nationalism. Recently, I did a video on Talarico, who's running for Senate here in the state of Texas. He is the Democrat candidate. His nomination has been decided. The Republican side is still in flux as of time of this video. What I discussed before was the faith that he uses in his campaign. That Talarico is a man of faith, and my point of that video was that the sort of faith that he has doesn't match up with the faith of conservatives. I'm not saying it's superior or inferior. As a social scientist, I don't make that judgment. But I'm saying it's different. And that people who assume certain things about how faith influences politics, if they base it on what they see with conservative Christians, it's not going to be the same with Talarico. And I don't think that's really, it should be a controversial take, but sometimes it's not quite as obvious. Regardless, I'm back talking about him some more. Maybe because he could possibly be the senator from the state that I live in, but he sometimes is all over the news. There was an article talking about, and I've seen multiple articles talking about Talarico as a progressive form of Christian nationalism. I want to explore that argument because I think it's a very interesting one. So, you may know from some other videos, I think Christian nationalism is a problematic term to use to describe Christians. And I'm not going to dive back into all that right now. It's not that important. Just know that that's how I feel about it. One of the main complaints, I'm certainly not the only one, but one of the main complaints about Christian nationalism is that Christian nationalism seeks to set up some sort of Christian theocracy. That Christians are imposing their values on others based on their faith. Now, let's be honest. Politics is about imposing one's values. But the critique of Christian nationalism is it's done on the basis of faith. Would that be a fair way to describe some of the approaches Talarico has used? I think that's the question worth asking. Can Talarico be an example of Christian nationalism on the left? Now, even if he is, those on the left don't tend to use religion as much as those on the right. However, can it be that Talarico is exhibiting at least some of the qualities people ascribe to Christian nationalism? Let's explore that. Before I do, if you like conversations like this, if you like this video, please like this video. Please consider subscribing to this channel. Let's get this word out here and so get more and more people engaging in these sort of conversations, which I think are very valuable to us. All right. The first question you have to ask is Talarico using his faith to promote his politics? One could be a person of faith, but not use their faith to promote their politics. It may be that, yes, I have a strong faith, but when I try to persuade you, I don't bring my faith into it. And then one say, okay, just the fact that you're a person of faith doesn't mean you're engaging in this sort of process because you're not bringing your faith into the persuasion. And here, I think we have to say that, yes, one of the arguments Talarico is making is that my faith leads me to these conclusions. And so you can be a person of faith and vote for me. For example, when Talarico made the comment about Marion had to provide consent to become impregnated by God, he's using that to justify his pro-choice stance. Now, I'm not making an argument about whether that's a good argument or not. That's not my concern right now. My concern is that is using one's faith to promote a political agenda. Now, you may think that's an unusual argument, and to be fair, that's the first time I ever heard that particular argument. But the whole notion of social justice, that is not new to progressive Christian ideology. Indeed, when we look back at the 20th century, especially the early part of the 20th century, there was a strong push by progressive Christians on issues of social justice, justifying by their faith, taking care of the poor, the marginalized. In today's society, the immigrant. This is not unique to Talarico. And because this is using one's faith to promote a certain political agenda, by that criteria, on that issue of Christian nationalism, it's really the same thing as what we see for conservative Christians. Now, when conservative Christians go, because of who God is, we don't take a life, therefore we're pro-life. That's a using religion. Now, you can use other arguments why you want to oppose abortion. There are secular pro-life groups, but that is using religion to promote a political issue. Likewise, if the reverse is true, God gives Mary consent, showing that we should be pro-choice. That's using religion as well. None of this is to say which side is right and which side is wrong. Obviously, I have my own beliefs that are closer to one side or the other on certain different issues. But if the process of using one's faith to justify political activism is wrong for the conservatives, then if we're fair, it's wrong for progressives. And progressives could argue, well, we're only doing what they're doing. The problem with that argument, and I hear it a lot, I hear it from both sides. The problem with that argument is, does that mean if the other side decided to start killing their opponents, you'd be okay with that as well because they're doing it? Either it's right or it's wrong. I'm not taking a stance on which it is in this video, but once you decide it's right, then it's right for everyone, or if it's wrong for everyone. Dynamic that I think is not appreciated as we look at this from the specter of those who are more conservative in their faith and those who are more progressive in their faith, theologically and politically, is that conservative Christians actually are less likely to engage in politics than progressive Christians. Because their numbers are greater, it's probably true that more of them engage in politics than progressive Christians, so people don't see that. But there's some good evidence they have been less likely to throughout much of our history. In fact, the argument early last century, from conservative Christians was that Christians should not engage in politics, but they should just concern themselves with the things of the Spirit. So, when we look at Talarico, I think it's fair, depending on how you define it and how far you want to go, to say to at least some degree, he is an example of progressive Christian nationalism. People who don't see that often don't see it because they like his politics, which is fine. That's your choice. But if we're being honest, then we have to say, okay, is it fair then to use one's faith to push your politics, even politics that I like? Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and something to think about. And if you want more things to think about, come on back. We can shatter some more paradigms.